Greetings, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the penultimate session of the day. We are gathered here today to talk about what we all hope will be a new industrial deal. And in this context, it is specifically in energy security and European competitiveness. Now, as we've heard from all the panels earlier today and yesterday, Europe is in a multi-crisis mode, if not a perma-crisis, the last decade and a half. But with that, the decisions that are being debated in Europe now, the decision that industry is particularly engaged in and trying to shape in, has brought us at a state where it's days when decades are shaped. But today, we have lined up a powerhouse of a group of speakers to capture this debate and to reflect it from a spectrum, a variety of perspectives, representing the perspective of Europe's industrial base. The chairman of Siemens Energy, Joe Kaeser, representing the perspective of energy infrastructure, Paschallis Bouchoris, who is the chairman of Greece's gas transmission operator, DESFA, for us from Greece, that we know the acronym better. The perspective of securing a decisional advantage, colloquially known as management consulting. Mr. Kyriakos Sabadakakis, country managing director of Accenture. The view of a European lender, the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development, Peter Stanfi, who is the head of country economics at EBRD. And finally, Christos Balaskas, truly bringing the view of the physical dimension of this competitiveness challenge of Europe, specifically the critical raw material dimension, as vice president of Eldorado Gold. Let's start with the first question, back to the decisional advantage we were saying. And while there's many input costs factors on competitiveness, there's also the matter of being able to make better decisions in a competitive environment and having that competitive edge. So I know that Kyriakos and his team at Accenture have a presentation that they'd like to show us with a case study of such a decisional advantage in the case of the recent Iran conflict and what the impacts are in Europe and Greece. Kyriakos?
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for inviting me to be here today. I know it's late in the day and I don't want to bore you or torment you with numbers, but I thought it was important to briefly try to give a picture around a question that we get a lot recently, basically, what is the impact of the Iran war on business, on economies? And since we've been getting this question a lot, we try to somehow quantify and we created a tool that we're using to help us navigate the current situation, which of course changes by the day. So yes, there are input parameters and there's output that we try to calculate, but every day there's new data. Anyway, using also AI and simulation models, what we try to do, leveraging very much WTO data for all countries around the world, all the input and output flows around the value chains. We've been able to model the current situation, and we're trying to draw conclusions. It's impossible to read this, there's too much information on this, and this is just a snapshot of the stuff that we analyze. But basically what we're saying here is that we're taking a scenario where we assume that there's pretty much complete blockage of the Strait of Hormuz. So we quantify as 90% of the traffic is blocked. This is, but you can even try with 100%. You can model that. And we're trying to see what is the range in the maximum price of oil impact that this would result to. And we're trying also to figure out, based also on past history, what could be a potential duration of the conflict. Now, just as a guidance, we're giving a range, the median of which is around $120 per barrel. And obviously, this doesn't show how this, and this is in the worst case that I described, right? And this doesn't exactly show how this evolves in time. Assuming that, you know, the war would stop today, how would we get back to, you know, a lower price level, right? This is an important parameter, and also we get asked a lot about that. But one of the things that we're trying to do, because you know that a lot of infrastructure has been destroyed, we're now trying to superimpose GPS pictures of infrastructure that's been destroyed to understand, because it might take 2 years to bring back up an infrastructure has been affected. But this is not a good picture. If we go into different countries and the impact in different countries, we have North America, which has, on the energy front, has a small impact. However, everything else has been produced by energy, you know, energy costs have gone up, is affecting things. Then we have Europe, and then we have, for example, Asia that we've modeled in different countries. You see different countries, and we have Greece, the row, the second from the bottom. And you see that everybody is affected. GDP is affected. It's going to be affected everywhere. In the positive scenario, it goes from -3, -6 for Greece. That's the more positive scenario. And what we model as a more worst-case scenario, it goes to -1.7 in the US to -2.8 in Greece. Now, I'm going to show you some more stuff later on, but if you look also at inflation, is the yellow line, that doesn't look good either. And we've already seen the inflation numbers picking up. So this is the reality, and this is the other countries that I was referring to. You see here Spain, UK, Netherlands, Japan, South Korea, very high impact. India, very high impact. So the numbers don't look good, and you know, it's a fact that even if the war would end today, that there would be a continued impact throughout 26 and 27. So then, you know, obviously many companies ask, okay, what does that mean for me? And you know, here we have an example, for example, from a UK retailer where we've been doing a drill down on what that would mean for that specific company. And by the way, the UK authorities have already calculated a 9 to 12% uplift in the cost of food by the end of the year in the UK. And this is going to start showing up sometime in September, okay? But basically, you can take this cascade failure model, this is exactly what it's called, and you can see how the impact of reduced energy flows, what does it mean for different parts of the value chain. And here, for this particular case, you see what is in red is severely impacted. This means higher cost for the consumer, okay? And wrapping up here, just one last slide. If the war would stop today, what would be the impact on Greece GDP? And we calculate it's going to be between 0.6 to 0.9%. So the previous forecast of 2.3% would drop to 1.7, 1.4 to 1.7. So, and so this is major. This is several billions of euros that are going to be lost, and obviously this resets the level from which we want to continue growing for the future. So, you know, the impact is there, the impact is big, and it's affecting us regardless of whether Europe participates in this or not.
Kyriago, you know, from one engineer to another, I'd love to see the extended version of this in a free live demo. But this is fantastic and fascinating, especially when one tries to use data and capture the broader context. And yet, despite all the data out there, all the reporting, all the analysis, there still seems to be a lack of consensus in Europe, whether it's within industry or between industry and government, or even within the political class. So, Joe, you know, from your experience, both, you know, previously as CEO of Siemens and now as chairman, you've interacted with so many governments within the same jurisdictions and multiple jurisdictions, and with many industry partners. What do you see or feel these days, or think is the single largest impediment that is preventing Europe from capturing its industrial ambition? Is it energy costs? Is it regulation? Is it access to capital markets? The list can be pretty long here, but we'd love your perspective on that.
Well, look, there's a long list, of course, of things which are in the way of being perfect. But that's, I think, just the nature of humanity, that things are imperfect. From the ones I think you have mentioned, I would probably pick what people call bureaucracy as the most relevant factor, because there is huge potential in Europe. The European Union, has all the tools to make Europe work well. It just needs to structurally reform itself. And structural reforms are, one feature that structural reforms, or people sometimes call it transformation, is really working. One very important feature is it needs to hurt first. If it doesn't hurt, it's no good. So that's a very characteristic feature. So the question, however, is why does it always take so long till people and nations are on the edge of the cliff? This is a real question to politics and, of course, also societal and economic leaders. The good thing is, typically, if you're on the edge of the cliff, people get really, really constructive about what needs to be done. Remember at the turn of the decade when we had the debt crisis in Europe. And, people were all over each other, and some people being really arrogant, they said, well, we need to deal with those pigs. Remember those arrogant way of talking to other nations? And I look at them today. This is about, professional, it's about innovative, it's about great, and it is about special today. Because they learn to listen well. They learn it the hard way, that structural reform is necessary at some point. And this is, I guess, the big question in the European Union. Do we need to take that long to be also on the edge of the cliff and then, find a way to structural reforms? Or are we capable and willing enough to do it now? And the way to do it now is basically that we design or redesign a European Union, which is actually a political union. Because what we have today is not a political union. They try to be one, but they don't have the ingredients. And how could they? How could they? Because they were formed way back when I was young, and obviously it's been some time ago. Europe was formed as a EWG, Europäische Wirtschaftsgemeinschaft, 6 countries. And why did they do it? Well, they were sick and tired about, guess what? Tariffs. So they did away with the tariffs. And then a few more countries joined. And then at some point in time, those countries said, you know what? It's really bad to have this, Lira and Deutschmark and Franc and Drachme and all that good stuff, because it's always so complicated, to deal with the fluctuation of the currency. So they invented the European Currency Union, which I think was okay after all. Just think about the interest rates which we had before we had that. So it was okay. And then from then onwards, kind of like a turn of the millennium, they've been trying to get into sort of a political union. And that really never worked out well. Why did it not work out well? Because there is no democracy. Because being forced to make unanimous decisions is not democracy. It's dictatorship. And the dictator is the one who just doesn't want to cooperate. Now, one went away just recently, but there are a few more. And so I think we need a structural reform to have a European Union 2.0 and say, this is the set of rules. We are going to make Europe great again. Mega, right? Make Europe great again. And so that's, I think, what is on the table. And once this is done, I believe the companies will be willing to invest again, because after all, it's a very attractive market. It may not grow that much, admittedly, but there is a lot of money in the savings account. There is a lot of still demand which Europe can use to spend good money on investment. So that's how I would do it if Europe was a company. But what do I know about politics, right? I just hardly know how to run a company well, or didn't know how to run a company well. But that's pretty much what I would do.
You know, Joe, make Europe great again, mega. So this is definitely a mega ambition. But it's a worthy cause. I think all of us, most of us, if not all of us, are all gathering at forums like this exactly to go through the process of building this consensus. Peter, from a macroeconomic perspective, where do you see the role, or how do you see the role of the EU's clean industrial deal as an actual strategic response to the competitiveness crisis or the energy cost crisis?
Vasilis, thank you. It's quite late in the day. A lot has been said today about Europe's competitiveness problems, the sclerotic decision-making, and so on. I'm not going to repeat any of that. I want to jump straight to what the question you've asked, Vasilis, about the clean industrial deal. And the main point I want to make today is that as we see it at the EBRD, and here I'm speaking in a personal capacity, but I think I'm reflecting the views also of EBRD experts, this clean industrial deal is really an important strategic pivot for the European Union. And for the first time, I think it's the EU treating competitiveness, energy security, and decarbonisation as an integrated agenda and not as trade-offs. And that very much rhymes with what we at the EBRD have been saying also for a long time. So competitiveness, energy security, and decarbonisation go together. They're not to be traded off against each other. And one of my colleagues at the EBRD referred to the clean industrial deal as Europe's survival strategy in what you might think of as a rather difficult, weaponized geopolitical environment, in a situation where Europe has persistent energy price gaps vis-a-vis the US and China, where we have the problems caused by Russia's ongoing attack on Ukraine, and also the move of a lot of clean technology companies to China. So Europe really has to make this work, and it is, we think, going in the right direction, because we know that we need lower energy prices in Europe, and the way to get that is not through subsidies, but rather three things: faster development of renewables, accelerated electrification, and the development of grid interconnection and market integration. We've heard a lot today about the fragmentation of Europe and its electricity market. That is a constraint, but here we see very significant potential for countries like Greece and countries in the Eastern Mediterranean to be energy security hubs by promoting interconnectors, LNG, renewables, and hydrogen corridors. It's all about making this work. It's all about coordination and speed and fast, efficient, and integrated action. But I must say, we at the bank, at the EBRD, are confident that this can happen. I wanted to end it on an optimistic note.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah, you know, it's better to be an optimist and be wrong than a pessimist and be right.
Exactly.
Here, here. Paskalis, you know, we've heard about the existential crisis of European competitiveness. We are all aware of the multi-crisis around the world, geopolitically and otherwise. But how does that translate on energy, and specifically energy infrastructure, and in the context of Southeastern Europe?
First of all, I need to thank the audience for their resilience. Staying, late in a long day here, we're really grateful. Resilience is, a lot that is, or strategic resilience is one of the drivers of what we're discussing here, right? The other is, what we're saying here is about unification and integration. And Southeastern Europe or Southeast Europe is a key terrain in which these concepts are being manifested these days. The vertical corridor is an example. The first, and we hear a lot about the vertical corridor in this country, but it's a truly remarkable initiative of not only integrating gas infrastructure, but also equally importantly offering a unified product. And in a way, unifying markets that were not unified before, right? And this translates to other parts of the industry where, these nations in Southeastern Europe were divided by geography, but also by history and politics. There is a reason why Balkanization means what it means. So that's important. The second takeaway is that your networks, your infrastructure, your energy infrastructure has to be future ready. Decarbonization is here to stay. Yes, we're talking about energy abundance and not being technology agnostic, but decarbonization is here to stay. In the humble contribution of DESFA, the organization I'm representing here today, 2 projects as showcases, right? One is what we're doing in hydrogen and trying to have our network hydrogen ready. We have a PCI, or Project of Common Interest, actually connecting as part of the Southeastern Europe energy hydrogen corridor our infrastructure with this of Bulgaria and investing in our own backbone, being part of the CCS value chain, covering the midstream part, another project, PCI, that we are involved with, and developing the liquefaction facilities for carbon, for captured carbon, etc. So future ready is the second. The third, I would say, is scale of investments. It's important in this environment, especially in our region, where the risk premium is historically higher, the markets are smaller, more fragmented. It's important to develop projects that are of scale, that are more bankable. No nation can do this alone, even before the shift of the pendulum to strategic resilience and strategic autonomy and self-reliance. When we're talking energy transition only, the amounts of money that has to be invested cannot be covered by governments alone. No one has the fiscal space for this, right? The banks, of course, are parts of the final capital providers. The multilateral organizations are helping a lot, but you really have to tap deeply into the capital markets. You have to tap into the global pension funds and the global asset managers. You need larger projects. So scale here is important. Integration in our region helps scale. Having reliable operators helps. DESFA is a successful privatization in Greece. It's an organization that is a truly European platform. The Hellenic Republic is represented, but also the TSOs, or transmission system operators of natural gas of Italy, Spain, Belgium are represented. It's a truly European platform. If you didn't have such a privatized, reliable operator, you wouldn't be able to invest in the order of magnitude we're investing these days, a 10-year rolling plan in the tune of 1.3, 1.4 billion, which is, for a country like Greece, a significant amount.
Thanks so much, Paschalis. And I love the framing of, Greece and Southeastern Europe being a bit prisoners of geography when it comes to energy. But we also have mineral endowments, or some mineral endowments. Eldorado, Christos, is known probably best in the public domain as a gold company, but maybe what folks don't know enough about its critical mineral byproduct of copper. Copper that is a critical raw material for electrification. Christos, we would love to hear more about Europe's pursuit of strategic autonomy on critical raw materials and how to replace its overabundant import dependency on non-market actors.
Yes, I hear all the previous panels, and this one, we're talking about raw materials, we're talking about energy, and unfortunately, this is a lot of doom and gloom. And I think we are more pessimistic than we are optimistic. There are quite a lot of bottlenecks in trying to achieve the autonomy. But in reality, in our case, in Eldorado Gold, I think we are very close in opening champagnes. By the end of the year, we will have production in Skouries mine of gold and copper. This is something that it's not very common in Europe. Of course, it took us about 30 years. That's a story of doom and gloom. But at the same time, very few people that one of the bottlenecks in autonomy, no, actually a lot of people believe that the bottleneck is the lack of geology. Actually, my godchild, Monica Koumoutsakos, who happened to be she's an English student at the moment, happens to be in the audience. She didn't believe that in Greece we have a gold mine. This is the average approach and thinking of the average European, that we cannot achieve autonomy. Yes, we can. What is obstructing us from that? I think that's more important to say, and not to waste a lot of time and keep you from the dinner appointments, which I'm sure you all have in mind. I think we need to stop operating in Europe as a single market regulatory setup and mindset. We should be operating as a geopolitical industrial market, and we should continue to do something like that. We in mining, we hate regulatory uncertainty. That's what's stopping us from developing the autonomy. At the same time, we start thinking about not deregulation, but acceleration. Can we accelerate things? And at the same time, yes, we are producing and we're going to producing gold and copper. But if the gold and copper goes and gets processed in China, then we achieve nothing. Also, if there isn't capital, risk capital, behind those initiatives in mining, in extractive industry, there's no way that we can do anything. So these things need to change dramatically. And also, the OPEC countries, they were talking, they're still having stockpiles. Why not critical raw materials stockpiles? When the war in Ukraine happened, LNG terminals started fast. Let's do something similar with the raw materials to achieve autonomy. Otherwise, my godchild, in a few years, will be paying an exorbitant amount for buying a smartphone or whatever it will be the next technology. This is something that we cannot afford to happen. And at the same time, I love natural gas, I love energy. We need the energy to be competitive. Without this, we can't work. Yes, but still, gas is transitional, Pascal. Mm-hmm. Metals are structural. We have to start thinking about raw materials and minerals. There is no other way.
Thank you, Christos. And between the EU Critical Raw Materials Act, the Net Zero Industry Act, what might be the Industrial Accelerator Act, it seems that there is a regulatory, or I guess Europe is trying to do what it knows best, which is create regulation that actually helps level these playing fields, at least from 2030 onwards. Now, a final round of questions. We have 2.5 minutes left. I ask each of you to try to keep it 20 to 30 seconds, honorable gentlemen, please. So, is Europe trying to achieve too much at the same time? Strategic autonomy, competitiveness, decarbonization. What should we prioritize? The one thing and why? Let's start in this order. Joe.
The short answer is yes. We need to prioritize, and second, I will prioritize a regulation about integrity and the security of data.
Fantastic. Peter?
I think everything comes down to competitiveness. Somebody in the previous panel mentioned jobs as well, and competitiveness will drive jobs. But competitiveness is also tied in closely with the other items you mentioned as well, I think. So it's not really a trade-off, as I've been trying to say in this panel.
Sounds like a difficult equation to solve. Paskalis?
I don't think that Europe or anybody, for that matter, has the luxury to choose among the three. It's one agenda. I would anchor everything on competitiveness. In order to be competitive in the industry and in energy, you need, affordable energy. But you need, in Europe, energy union. We don't have an energy union yet, with all our great achievements as a European experiment, and capital markets union. The dirty little secret when we talk about strategic autonomy and self-reliance is that it's very costly. In order to reassemble, the manufacturing base or the value chains, it's very costly. From the cheap offshoring, we go to nearshoring, to friendshoring. You build from scratch, that's very costly. So you need an effective capital markets union.
I think we definitely try to do too much in Europe. We also try to have the cake and eat it. I say that we are, all of us in the industry, we are competing unfairly with other areas. We're paying very high energy costs. I think we should be looking at competitiveness, and that will also secure our autonomy. And I think it's important to proceed in this way, avoiding everything else. And I do believe that we should not lose our values. We should continue with our values, but at the same time, use whatever muscle that we have to have a level playing field. Otherwise, it won't work.
Iago?
I would say strategic autonomy for sure, because without this, the rest, will not necessarily exist. So both in energy and materials as well. Second, I would say we definitely need to focus even more on technology. This is where we lost a lot of our competitive edge, meaning both in the usage of technology as well as in the discovery of new technologies. We have a great engineering culture and legacy in Europe. We should take advantage of that. Data sovereignty, I fully concur. This is very important as well to keep our autonomy. And last but not least, the capital markets and the savings and investment union, because this is the oil that's going to make things run. Because all the rest might be there, but if this is missing, still capital is going to be going somewhere else.
Thank you, gentlemen. So, digital sovereignty, energy and capital markets union, strategic autonomy, and don't forget the job multiplier. Thank you, folks, and we hope this is enough food for thought for your dinner tonight.